AAR is an acronym for After Action Review. It's something the military implements during events including everything from a small squad-based react to ambush scenario to massive joint task force coordinated attacks. They break each scenario down and talk about success and failures in every aspect. It's something they do to increase lethality and efficiency. Without improvements, you're stagnant. And in that business, staying put on a highly kinetic battlefield is a death sentence. It's the same framework that we use for this show and something we intend to go back and look at multiple times as production quality increases. But this is the first. Welcome to Veteran Success Story. So today's episode of Veteran Success Story is going to be a little different. In the military, we do something known as an AAR, or an After Action Review. And I decided to do that as well as a few other things, like explain where I'm coming from with this podcast, what I hope to accomplish from it, some of the guests that I have on, just a little bit of behind the scenes and what I've learned along the way. A few reasons. I want to hold myself accountable, but I also want to show to where this is a continual learning experience, especially right now, to where that learning curve, it's steep. It's extremely steep. But we're talking about, within 8 episodes, which I was contacted right before the latest episode, or this last one with Stephen Graham had aired. I was contacted by the CEO of Podmatch, to which I got a little bit of a history with, but congratulating me, saying, man, like, I saw you as a guest going up in the ranks, and now you're running your own podcast, and congratulations. You've done more episodes than what I normally see before people give up. So that's kind of cool. Before we get into the whole thing, I also want to go down and make a rundown that there's going to be a separate episode or a mini episode about marketing a book or bringing a book to market. So a little bit of this is going to explain my background, where I came from in the military. Just a brief overview. You can read it in the book. And that's one of the things. That's one of the places I came from. I wrote a book having to do with this, but there was already this podcast and a whole different book is something in the works that's been in the works before Damn the Valley was even written. So this is really something that's coming to where it's supposed to be, coming to a head. There's more later on. This is basically just the practice round, but more to come on that later as well. So this isn't some kind of vanity episode. I actually do want to hold myself accountable and bring forward some cool, outlooks. Like, hey, this is what he did. This is where there was a zig and or a zag instead of a zig, where everybody normally goes, and how it worked out, and some of the stuff I'm implementing, but also some of the things that I'm going to be cutting. But let's get into it, and here we go. Time for yet another Veteran Success Story. So I guess because we haven't done this before, I'm going to do a little introduction of myself, where I come from, and just get right into it in establishing who I am, why I started this podcast, and go down a little bit of a list that I have here. But name's William Yeske. I served in the United States Army for a while, which was kind of the background to all this, and the call for a purpose towards helping out other veterans. I know I talk a lot with a lot of the guys that I served with here and there. When there's issues, I kind of try to keep my hands into know what's going on. Like, for instance, I was talking with one of them, and he had no idea that the Hunter 7 organization existed. And they deal specifically with cancer-related issues and veterans. And I was able to get him over there and start getting the correct testing and based towards what he needs. And it was really good to be able to do that. But I wanted to be able to push more of this out for other people. Hence why things started to point towards Podcast 10. But first, especially with an podcast labeled Veteran Success Story, when quite honestly I still don't see myself as a successful someone, although I've had some successes along the way. So that end I want to share, but it's also a journey. And to be able to kind of document but network with people along the way has been crazy valuable. But let's get into first where I found some of the success, and that is in the book I wrote. You'll see what one behind me as well, but Damn the Valley. It was written about a deployment that I was on in Afghanistan, to where we experienced a 50% plus casualty rate. I think I've been told, I usually will say 52%, although I've been told it's between 54 and 56 by one of the guys that I think it was Armandiras that was telling me, who is involved in an organization to where that, they have those statistics that they're constantly going over. And I trust his numbers. I just know it was over 50% when I had looked at the numbers a long time ago. Needless to say, traumatic deployment. And we had a book that was being written about this deployment and the follow-on, really, that encompassed the story of one of the guys that ended up committing suicide. It's something that has happened with there's been a few instances of suicide within the ranks. But I think since then, guys have really come together and they've reconnected. There's been a lot more of a reconnection there through the efforts of one of the other organizations out there who holds these Operation Resiliency. I think it's Resilience now. Operation Resilience retreats for hard hit units, and to reconnect them, and ultimately to put guys back in touch with one another. It's still on them to follow up with one another, though. Really, it's an initial excuse to have some fun times, but to reconnect these guys, and they start to realize the value in, that fellowship with one another, and rebuilding that community and that support system that they once had. Because a lot of us, we all have our own issues, but a lot of times we feel that people don't understand. The frustrations are different in our world. Just, I don't know if it's maybe due to some of the things that we've seen. That there's that instant rapport when we're talking to another veteran. But really, it all boils down to a lot of the veteran issues are also going to be issues that are solved within our own veteran community. It just seems to be that anytime we've gotten together in a group and someone brings up a problem that they're having, someone else within the group has experienced the same problem and has been able to offer a path through it. So it's kind of through that, and through some of the reconnecting with the book, and seeing on how I've helped some of the guys, and seeing really on how this book has helped out with a lot of guys out there. They have been contacted via email, some phone calls and stuff from the guys I was with, but it's reached far beyond that now. There's other guys that have written their stories down. I know Charlie Company with the Devil's Playground and Andrew Bragg. That's more recent. There's another one coming from a First Sergeant Fortnott that he is the Top Gun, so it's the 101st that replaced Charlie Company in the Arghandab River Valley. They have a book coming. The guys that were there from Alpha Company during the time we were there, they're formulating something together, and they're putting their memories in. And there's talk of another platoon within Bravo Company also bringing together a project, which, on all of these, I've told the guys, and I've offered and been able to help along the way. Some of them, either whether it's been the writing process, kind of putting together a rudimentary marketing plan. I can't do all of it, but I can kind of show the paths I took, and that's actually going to be something, I think I said it before, but a follow-on episode at some point, is how I put this book together, how I was able to do it, how I was able to get some of the guys involved. And really, one of the other guests I want to have coming up, for Bragg's book, I feel that he did a little bit better of a job. He kind of took the information that I gave him and was able to include the guys within Charlie Company a little bit more within writing the book, and really integrate them into the book tour and some of the events out there. It just was something that either due to the speed of timing that I had to put together my own book, and some of the things going on within there, and the man, I mean, just finding out how to do this first time around. There's some rough times in there. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have any help in bringing this out. There was one email that I sent out to someone, and they gave me a quick list, media contact list. I got one out of there, which turned out to be a complete shit show, for the lack of better terms. So, a lot of this was done on my own, but I learned so much along the way. And the good part about all that is that I can take that information, and for other people out there that are formulating their own books that don't have agents, or, are thinking, man, this is going to have to be self-published, or I really wish I had some information on this along the way. Hopefully that's something I can help provide, because it's not an easy task, and it's definitely not an easy task doing it mostly on your own. There were some points to where I was like, am I going to make this happen? But I think that's really with anything worthwhile. And that really leads into, I talk, my military background is covered in the book. I did, up until 2015, I was active duty. I did 3 years in the reserve, but pretty much those were throwaway years. I think within 6 months of being there, I got word back from the VA about the extent of my injuries, and I had been labeled 100% permanent total. And from there, I kind of went to, my reserve group, and I was like, hey, this is what's going on. Please stop my pay immediately. I did 3 years in the reserves unpaid, which was, yet another thing. Why I wasn't early released, I have no idea. But, that's another story for another day. During that time, though, I was also going to college. I finished up business school in 2.5 years over at Towson University. And during my time there, my commute from there is about an hour away. So every day, I stopped listening to music. I started listening to podcasts, really either filling my morning with the first half of one and then the other half on the way back home. But I was taking marketing classes and just a wide variety of things. And I did notice that, a lot of the marketing information, and one of the podcasts that I actually listened to was the MFCEO project with Andy Frisella. And the amount of marketing information that's in there, or listening to guys like Seth Godin, I think Rogan had a few people on. I know Rogan, gold standard, or at least was. I think that kind of shows that I've evolved over time. I've surpassed it, but it's the OG, so, what are you going to do there? It's an easy format. It's unedited. People love it because you really get to see who that person is. And that's something that I kind of carry over in this one, is I want to do most of my stuff unedited because it's real. We have so much out there that's fake and superimposed on and edited, and, flipping through as you're watching it and stuff, just to trying to keep your attention. But we kind of lose that long format and that human connection, or that humanity behind these episodes, or behind these different podcasts that are out there. So I was talking about my commute to and from college and listening to podcasts and the value that I would find. I honestly think that in some of these podcasts and some of the knowledge that I uncovered, in going back and forth, and instead of filling my time with music, filling it with, that blank space there, filling it with knowledge from different people, from subject matter experts across a variety of different fields. I started to far surpass anything in the marketing class that my professors were putting out, to where they would even come to me and be like, where are you getting this information? Or how did you run this campaign in this mock campaigns and stuff that we would have, that were one of the homework things. We crushed on one of them, and they were wondering what we were doing there. And a lot of that information was stuff that I was learning from podcasts and reading. That actually came out later on when I had some of the corporate panel interviews for some big name marketing firms, and one of the why marketing. And I started talking about my background, a little bit that I had in there in automotive journalism, and than somebody who had turned me on to marketing that had formerly served within our unit. I was interested in it, and one of the guys, Robert Muscle, kind of pointed me his way, and he said, "Hey, you got to talk to Stefan about this." And I did, and he told me some books to read to get me started on it. And that was one of the questions in the panel interview that like literally stopped this interview dead in the tracks. Bunch of younger people interviewing me, and military end, really the culture was not the same. They were a little bit of that tech geek sort of beer fridge in the break room with a ping pong table, and just more of a fun atmosphere instead of regimented. I don't know where the culture would have fit so much, but the panel interviewers asked me, and I there was somebody sitting in from the UK, and they weren't supposed to talk or anything. They were a higher level executive. They were just observing for something they had going on in the States. And he literally stopped the interview, and he's like, "Hold on a second. What was that you just said on there, that question? You said you got a background in marketing from podcasts and books? Like, what books?" And I started going into what books I had read and what I had derived from each. And he proceeded to stop the interview and turn towards the interviewers and say, "What books have you guys read lately?" And all three of them just stared at him like they had no idea what to say. And he just kind of turned back to me, and he's like, I should have known at that point, the writing on the wall, but he's like, "I don't know where this interview is going, but keep doing what you're doing. Don't ever stop that quest for knowledge, and you're going to be just fine." Needless to say, it didn't get hired. And shortly after, COVID happened. And when that happened, a lot of the places that I was looking at, a lot of the different marketing firms and positions, all that dried up, so I'm like, where can I take my marketing skills and use it within my community? I started doing some, my own agency with some small business stuff and people in the area, helping out either restaurants integrate online ordering systems and website stuff, social media based platforms, and helped out on that end. So that's a little bit of that, and that actually helped out when I started writing my own book or putting my own book stuff out there. And I think it's actually COVID that brought a lot of the opportunities that we're seeing today in the online world. I mean, as far as podcasts and digital creators and even more information out there on the World Wide Web has been a result. My ability to reach out and have guests on this podcast that I never would have dreamed to been able to have otherwise have been available. So that's great. And again, all this information out there, I wanted to take some of the issues that I had faced when going to college and then found value in these podcasts, but bring forward this information to the other people that I had served with. A lot of them, either they don't listen to podcasts because they can't relate, whatever the case. Some of them are behind on that, but maybe they'll listen to this one. And I know from working on the book and working on different projects that I have, my own book as well, it was something that I never wanted to write, yet here we are after I wrote it. A lot of life seems to encompass things around that end, but I had always been drawn to write about those experiences. I didn't know how. I kind of shirked the responsibility. But once I jumped in and once I got things going, I think it's worked out rather well. So this podcast, kind of the same thing. That was actually how this was brought to be. I had been thinking about it for a while, and actually towards the latter end of college and school, and then when I was over in Columbia University, finishing up the program over there, I started to started to take a lot of the value and the frameworks that I had built within my own, those disciplines and those habits that I kind of learned within the military, and had started using it within my civilian life. Living with intention, um, you know, having the discipline to get up early, work out every day, cold shower every morning, you know, do the meditation stuff, do the brain work. Uh, Again, I think a lot of this actually is the same translated as goes back to Andy Frisella. He has a program called 75 Hard. I've never actually run the 75 Hard program. I probably should. You know, I know that I can do it. It's just a fact of sitting down and doing it. But I know I have that discipline. I mean, if I did what I've done with everything else so far, I wouldn't be where I'm at without having the discipline and the habits and those frameworks in place. But it's always good to go back and revisit and put some of those other things into place as you kind of readjust over time. And sometimes over time you lose some of the good ones that you don't realize it at first, and then you have to go back and give yourself that gut check, which again, that's sort of what this podcast episode is right here. It's our AAR. It's our after action review, or at least we're going to get there towards the end of everything, the small things that I've learned along the way here. So writing my own book, or writing a book about those habits and frameworks, I did. I put together a book. I think it took me a few months to write, but it was just here and there, putting down chapters, putting down the snippets. It's sort of almost like a Tools for Titans kind of thing. And if you've never seen that, that's actually up on my shelf. I think it was Ryan Fugit when I was on Combat Story. Off camera, he pointed it out. He was like, "Is that Tools for Titans?" By Tim Ferriss. But it's a lot of the guests that he's had on his podcasts, and he takes these little snippets of value that he found from each one of them. Hey, this is something I learned from here, and he put it down into this particular book. And there's so much like compacted common sense knowledge in there. You know, so I kind of did the same thing, but based towards the veteran audience. And it's something that never made its way onto the market, because really when I looked at it and I was like, well, you know, you could publish this thing, but quite honestly, when you look at everything up to at that point anyway, I don't feel like I actually had done anything. So, you know, it's like, well, I kind of have to hold myself to the fire there. And that's sort of right around there is, I think it was my last year in school, is when I interviewed for the original book that was being written about our deployment. There was a Wall Street Journal reporter by the name of Ben Kessling, that he came to one of those Operation Resilience events that was being held, you know, and he felt the need to tell the story of, you know, the guys that were there. And a lot of us that were there, I mean, we had all these traumas and all these stories and time within Afghanistan that we had together. But no one had written anything about it. No one probably would have written anything about it if it hadn't been for Mr. Kessling standing up and saying, hey, there's a story here, and there's value in sharing this story and what you guys have been through. I see it as a way to bring about some change. And I think part of it also is to inspire others, you know, to move forward. And, you know, I guess from seeing where we're at now, and in my life anyway, in this end, it's definitely been something that's inspired me in multiple ways to get up, to do something, and to do something including the other guys. It's not just you. You have to be putting something together to give back for other people. And it was really him that inspired me to write my own. I know I talk about it in my book, in one of the chapters, towards the end there, because it really is, it's part of the story now. You know, I mean, he took his time to sit down and write about some of the things that we experienced. I think I show up halfway through there. A handful of the other guys do, as well as the main character and who the story is really covering. You know, it's a book about Bravo Company, but a very small sliver. In there, just and again, it's just proving to be a very large picture of everything as more and more things come along. But I'm glad he wrote it, and I'm glad that when I came to him and I said, you've heard my end of the story in my interview. Um, what do you think I should do here? I have always felt to put this story down, and he's like, and do it. He encouraged me. He said, I think you should just go ahead and do it. And he gave me some pointers. Just due to the interview, he knew that I was going to be all over the place. And that was actually one of the things that came into play. He was dead right. That came into play when writing the book. And it was one of the hurdles that I had to get through. But once I did, I have had other writers and other people that are writers that actually served within that unit come to me and ask me, how did you establish that timeline? That is absolutely insane. I have no idea how you could have done that with that many instances. And literally the timeline that I established in the Damn the Valley book was, I went through and, it was having to look at the dates the casualties happened. And I was able to put together some semblance of a timeline in that way and go from there. Which I guess it's kind of sad when you're tracking a book's a character's progress through walking through minefields by how many people are getting hurt and when. Kind of a shame it had to be done that way, but that was the method and proved to be a very reliable method, especially in that deployment in getting that down. Because as a lot of people know, especially if you've been deployed multiple times, you start to jumble those stories up and those times of intensity. Everything kind of blends together. So that was one way we could do it. So in bringing these stories and bringing this book to market, I had that marketing experience that I had been building up to that point and already had some real world and running ads and whatnot. So I kind of had a semblance of a campaign, even though it was the first time running a book campaign. But it's proven to be something that, I took a few things from it. I'll give one or two pointers here with it before going into, down the road. Like I said before, I want to do a whole episode on that end because there's so much that can be extrapolated from everything I learned there. But one of them is I went and looked at other authors out there, especially first-time authors, and I looked at how their books were launched and how they were doing it and what they were doing. I still don't know if I'm completely right or wrong here, but at least for this one, it just felt right. And it was that I decided, instead of running it on my own personal, handle at William Yeske, on Instagram or across social media, that really what I needed to do in all of this is to create a movement. If you were going to take the time and create a book about a bunch of these guys' stories, and they had all sent pictures forward to assist with that. I mean, I had a handful of pictures, I think maybe 6 or 7 usable pictures. And when the publisher had asked, we need, I think it was 20 or 30 photos for the book. Can you supply those? I just said yes, because I knew that the guys out there would support it. I knew that someone out there would help out, because they always have, and they did. They responded within droves. They responded in such a way to where I had enough pictures to do a social media campaign for over a year, in which I have been doing. I think we're at about 1.5 years now. For all the stuff that's been posted up, and you can see all this stuff. It's at Damn the Valley Book on just about any platform out there, all the major ones. And there's daily pictures that show up, and a lot of those were personally curated, and they're all from the Argandab. I spent the time in going through them and editing this stuff and putting some proper captions to them instead of letting AI do it, just because I knew it was something that, if it was messed up, it was going to be something that would end up, hurting the guys or causing some pain out there. So it's something I held very, very personally, and I'm glad I did, because I think it's something that's really pulled this, project and this whole thing through to where it's at now. It's also, been a really good learning experience up to this podcast. That's how did this start?
you know,
How did I get to be on camera, doing this with multiple people, such as, like I can't even believe, either talking to one of the former undersecretaries in the Army or, a legend such as John Stryker Meyer, or Michael Cook, helping run lines out of Afghanistan. But really, this all boiled down to, one of the other Argondot books. And it was Andrew Bragg with The Devil's Playground, which you'll look is episode number 1 of Veteran Success Story. And I had worked with Andrew a little bit about, getting him an introduction into the publisher, talking with him about some of the stuff that I did on my social media campaigns and what could work on that end. And, some of where I'd seen successes. Hey, people like to see pictures with faces, these are times to post. This is, if you have this content, this is the stuff that works really well to boost in the beginning. And I think we had 2 or 3 podcasts by the time, his book came out. And I know that I ran a little bit different of a campaign for mine, but at the same time, I needed the practice. For mine, I ran, it was, I think it was 46 podcasts within 2 months. When my book first came out, it was just a run. It was every other day. Some days I was doing 2 podcasts. Every other day was one of them. But if you go back and you find some of these, I'm incredibly awkward. I feel I'm still a bit awkward, but I'm getting better at it. And that's just, and especially in these solo episodes, like right now, this is something that I do not want to be doing. I don't want to be in front of these cameras right now talking essentially to myself, but knowing that I'm speaking to an audience that is taking in this information. You guys are listening to this and either having a little chuckle about it, but at the same time, go ahead and go live sometime. If you don't have experience on this before, you get the jitters, and I feel a charge to bring forward stuff that's going to be able to be really used out there. It's going to be usable. It's going to add value to someone's life. This isn't just a podcast where you come on and you hear, man, like these days you have anything from political smearing or, vets embellishing their accounts, vets tearing down other vets, service organizations going at other people's throats, influencers getting ripped apart by others. I mean, it is just so dog eat dog out there. And that's something I wanted to stay away from so entirely, all of that drama and all of that. And this is literally just meant to be something. If you have something where someone is taking their time out and they're tuning in or they're giving you their time, you're talking with somebody on the phone for a half an hour, make it worth their time, add value to their life, and this is something to where I spend enough time putting these together. Man, trust me, video format, I know the book campaign leading up to this, I have about 30,000 people from the Damn the Valley book following that campaign out there, and to build that was pretty rough. That was practice grounds, building a campaign and building video for podcasts. That other stuff, those social media posts and running a book campaign, that was child's play compared to what we're into now. Because every week on something like this is such a crunch to be able to have your workflows done, especially in the very beginning when it's, it's on me. Okay, I could be like, oh, I've got a crew doing this and everything else. No, I wish I did. But at the same time, on why I'm doing it this way and why I'm not outsourcing a bunch of it yet is I want to know enough about this to know, what those other people are going through as well, but to be able to kind of formulate some of my own things on that end. And I'm learning, the learning curve is huge on the way here, as it is. But let's get back to Andrew Bragg, that episode 1, and kind of really essentially what I'm going to build into what is the AAR here. So what exactly is an AAR, or an after action review? So anytime you go and do a field exercise, or you're running through a shoot house, or whatever scenarios that we had within the military, they go back over it. Hey, what did we suck at? What did we do shitty? What did we fuck up? And then, what did we do good? Where did we excel? What do we need to continue? That's something that I do every time, I did every time I went on as a guest to a podcast, and now do every time I'm going through and editing the episode and hot washing it. Hey, what can I put in here? What can I learn? What's one small improvement that I can make along the way? And I think after 7 episodes, there's some good stuff. I think there's things that are going to stay. Like that minute-long intro in the beginning. I think that that's something that adds a little bit to the interest to the episode. They don't have a ton of views yet, but at the same time, anything within your first 10 episodes, you're not going to really have a lot of that in, but it drives a lot of the emotion behind the episode. And you might see, anywhere on YouTube or social media, hey, you only have X amount of views. But what you don't know is I can see on the back end, on the podcast end, like who's listening, how long are they listening, what are they catching from this, where am I losing them in the conversation? And I can tell you that after I added intros like that, and once they started to become really good, this thing almost has a 100% listen through rate. I think it's for most episodes it's 80%, which is that's good for a new podcast to come out and have someone click on there and spend an hour of their time listening through the entire thing and hold their attention. That's not bad, especially these days. And this was one of the things in my marketing classes and stuff. The average attention span of a human these days is smaller than a goldfish. I think it's 6 seconds. It might even be lower at this point, but a goldfish is 8. That's where content and social media and ADHD and caffeine and how quickly we switch the channel, that's our attention span rate, which is insane. That's crazy to me. But let's get into it. So episode 1, Andrew Bragg. Trying to get him another episode, get him some content out there, get him a conversation. And we just jumped on. I said, Andrew, what are we going to need? It's coming out. I think it was a week before the book launch. He said, I don't have any other podcasts. And I'm like, okay. All right, man, let's do it. Let's get on. Let's just do one. Let's get people fired up. And we did one. It's still actually the most played. Crazy enough, it's the most played episode, which is really cool. But it's the most played episode in the repertoire. But at the same time, there was no framework. It was literally just me and him sitting down and having a conversation. I don't even know how much of it I edited. I think I just did the lead in and out. I didn't have an introduction video. I plan on actually going back and talking with Andrew again, because I know the amount of things he's learned during his book campaign and throughout the different events. I know just recently we had, his event down at the Airborne and Special Operations Museum, which great venue, by the way. If you're down in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and get the chance, stop by there. The flag from the front cover of this book is on there. Some of the, or is down there. Some of the artifacts that were brought forward by the guys. And I do think that Andrew is coordinating some stuff with their guys to go into the DoD historical archives, which was one of the things that in the beginning we started talking with the museum curators and got it opened up to where we were able to do that. And there's some more stuff that actually has to get dropped off there, like such as journals holding, grid squares, to where, there's round counts. There's like just unbelievable historical accounts that I still have that I'm scanning into a system that I want to make more available to the guys that are writing, or want to write follow-on books to all of this as the years go by. So something where they have a catalog for just them to be able to access, because that's part of their history, that's part of their story. And that's something, again, writing a book and getting this stuff down into the museum to make something that's worthwhile, that adds a value to somebody who's been in that unit. Their kids and their grandkids can go down there and they can be like, hey, pull out these items, or we can, as a group, go down there. Hey, we're going to hold a reunion event. Can you send this stuff over to this location over here where the event is happening? And, that is part of the deal. And it was a great thing to have worked out with them. But episode 1, back into the AAR and the reviewing of everything. There was no framework. It was too much of a conversation. I had my side of research done. I had read Bragg's book. It'd been a little while since then. Since I'd read it, I probably should have gone back through it and revisited some of that end. But we just solely wanted to get him out there. And that goes conversely for episode 2 and 3, that veteran success story. There's too much framework. I kind of had tunnel vision. I was like, hey, we need to drill down, what being successful is in these success frameworks within these fields, and whereas I had great guests, Jack Murphy, being an outstanding journalist and runs a wild Substack there, and just his background. He's got a book out now that just came out called We Defy, about the special forces unit that would literally strap nukes to themselves and jump out of planes with that's what they train to do, suitcase style nukes. And in a doomsday type scenario where it was a suicide mission to be doing that. I mean, just absolutely crazy, super secret stuff. And he delves down into it and does a good job in anything that he does with all that stuff. Him and Sean Naylor, and of course the Team House. But yeah, I mean, I got tunnel vision. I wasn't relaxed. I really should have let the guest pull more of their passion out in the stories that they had. Number three, that was the in-person episode at Reveille Grounds. I did that episode on a GoPro and a cell phone. I think the cell phone footage turned out better than anything else, actually, which was good because I had that focused on the guest for the shorts, and that worked out. But now I have you can see it because it's being used in this episode, a professional camera, and it's manually focused in. So you got a little bokeh in the background here, and I'm putting some efforts in towards making this something to where you can watch on your 65-inch screen, and it's going to put out in 4K if you wanted to. Really the ultimate vision for this, or the vision down the road, is something that's an actual production level. It's something that's production level, something to where we're using 6K, 8K cameras. It could be something that would air on something like Netflix or Amazon, but that's down the road. Speaking of that, though, finding out a lot of the issues there and stuff are in lighting. And I was hoping that this stuff was in the way. I got some great Black Friday deals on some lighting equipment, and I have some really good. I did not cheap out on lighting, so there is some professional studio quality lighting on the way, and I'm excited about that because it allows me to push out more into these, do a higher quality in-person episode, which is ultimately what I would love to do, because I would love to take some of this onto the road. I mean, I already have and already am a little bit, but take this onto the road to where we can also do events with other veterans and capture some of that raw end of things, if it's appropriate. Again, I never want this to be something that's a PR initiative and whatnot. This is supposed to be sharing good news, sharing frameworks and habits with each other, sharing information that's relevant and good for the veteran community. That's what this is about. So, episode 4 was I needed more, to go off of. Again, Michael Cook. I read his book. I had a little bit of a background in Afghanistan. I didn't have too much of a background with the Abbey Gate and knowing everything that transpired up to there. I was busy at the time, and I know that's not really completely an excuse, but it was like when you've been to Afghanistan and you hear, hey, there's something else happening here. And at that point, I think I was kind of distanced from a lot of that. I had a lot going on in my own life that I need to focus on. That was um, it was far off. It was echoes for me. It wasn't something that I was focused on. So that, and then there was a sound mix up, and I don't know whether it happened in post mixing or I believe what actually happened was the camera I was using, because I was still using the GoPro. I was using instead of this microphone, even though this one was out, I was actually using an external mic that was attached to the GoPro, and it was just one of those small, unpowered dynamic mics, and comparatively, the sound just was not the experience on what I want in a podcast for the audience. And I know I'm one of those people who's in particular as well. If the person behind the mic doesn't sound good, I'm probably going to switch the channel. There's even certain people out there that provide a tremendous value, and I can't stand their voice, so I don't listen to them. So I'm sorry, guys. It's just it's part of it, and my voice might be some of the same. Maybe I just need to smooth it out a bit. Number 5. So episode number 5. I should have known the equipment and bandwidth and technical problems. When talking with the representative for the guest for episode 5, they had been like, hey, he's been on Fox. He knows the deal. They're going to be at a high bandwidth. He's going to have equipment. Cool. I never actually got to talk to the guest beforehand, but when it showed up, it was I'm on the road at a remote location on my cell phone with my earpods in, and I was like, this is exactly what I don't want to bring to the table, but all right, let's go for it. And wildly enough, I have to say the platform that I'm using, so I'm using Riverside on the back end. Props to them, because it did a really good job. The system they have in place did a really good job in cleaning up the audio, and it doesn't sound as tinny or as bad as a cell phone normally will in an interview. So Riverside, thank you for that. And I know once I get a website up, and I probably should put this stuff in the social media, but yeah, because I'm a Riverside user, they give you an affiliate link, and I need to put it out there because they do. I'd highly suggest, if you wanted an all-in-one package, that they offer something pretty great, especially for the money. The value-wise is, because of the time saving and the editing and whatnot. I do everything else afterwards with a post program anyway. But as far as uploading into the cloud and the abilities that Riverside holds, absolutely fantastic program. But we got through that, and then there came episode 6. Big name, big social media presence, amazing guest, amazing stories from Vietnam. He was also using a Macintosh. I'm on a PC. I've never used Riverside on a Mac. And, whatever mix up in the program or whatever link that was sent over there, from there, it just was lost in translation. So we ended up not even being able to use the standard program that I would use. We used 2 sessions of free Zoom to put it together, because it's the only thing the guest, was, I also had a Google Meet in the background, but there was nothing Google on this computer. Everything was through Safari. He wasn't going to install any other programs. So he really worked with me, because I was about to lose it. And, it definitely showed through in the episode. I was not relaxed. It already had me a little flustered, and then it kind of like amplified that tenfold, because here's a guest that I respected highly, and then I'm having these issues and I'm on edge, and now I'm so thrown off because I was already nervous to be talking to this guy. So, so that was fun, but he took it all in stride, and he was super cool about all of it. So on that one, John, thank you. And episode 7, the last one here with Stephen Graham. Man, I know he's a pro, so he came through just perfectly. It was probably one of the easiest episodes for me to talk to the guest and to put together. At the end, I had a little bit of lighting stuff. I was using the new camera, but on autofocus. But he was there. He was there on time. He was ready to go. He was, he was just on it. And talking with Steven on that episode was a real treat. And seeing what he's bringing forward for the veteran community through Team House Studios and what he's doing with the, really the mission and how they film Sheepdog, and what they're trying to convey, what they're trying to bring light to, and be a change within the veteran community. Really respect him for that. And that's the type of guest I really want to have, more of on this show. Is, it's not just veterans. There's also people doing things within the veteran community to where, either veterans don't have a spot in yet, but it's in every case of these, it's somebody with a purpose built in that they're trying to help. They're trying to be part of the solution. And that will always have a place on this show, as well as other veterans that have found their own way, and other guests that have been doing good within the veteran community, because really that's something I started hashtagging things, stronger together. But I truly believe that, that was something that, I saw in the book, in the chapters in the book that really shined, and in the places to where things really came through. It's been where the guys have come together and they've worked collaboratively. That's always been, there's always going to be more power, or more, it's going to be more powerful of an effort there when it comes multifaceted like that. It's not just about you and just out there as the Lone Ranger. You can't do it on your own. You really can't. We couldn't in the military. It's not something that you can do. Even tier 1 operators and stuff running in 2-man teams and stuff, they still have a huge network support behind them, to be able to accomplish that type of thing. This is the same thing here. We can't, we can have an effect, but you can't be that, can't be what you need it to be without it being a group effort. I think we complement each other in so many ways. And even it's through our differences. Who out there has heard of Red Team? It's the Red Team is where, no matter what, you might have a few of the teams working on the solution or the assault, but there's always that one team that goes through and they look at everything and they pull it apart and they pick it apart and they say, hey, there's a problem here, or this is how we would run it. And they run it multiple ways as the adverse. They pick apart, they be that devil's advocate and they say, well, I see problems in here, here, and here. And knowing that issue is, or knowing those problems, working through those problems, or knowing that they exist and that risk has to be mitigated, is half the battle. So in seeing we've been on here for a little while, I don't want to just be on here talking everyone's ear off. But I do want to ask, and I'm going to probably put a poll or two in here, that if people have good guest suggestions, bring them forward. Send me an email. I think it's just veteransuccessstory@gmail. Shoot me a DM on social. And let me know. Hey, this guy would be perfect, or this guest, you should talk about this guest, or what do you have any information on this particular issue or this problem? And I'll try to find a guest in that area that can cover that sort of thing. And call me out too. Send me a message about, hey, I saw something here, or it'd be really cool if you tried this out, and I'll give it a whirl. But I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with and what you send. Look for the poll that I'll put in there. This has been the first of probably, what'll end up I definitely, I want to come back in AAR in the future, and be like, all right, here's the review. This is where we're at up to this point, and this is what I've noticed, and this is what we're going to do to be a little better in going forward. I figured it was a good time to do it. We're coming into the close of the end of the year, and everybody's sort of looking at and evaluating everything up until now anyway, within probably their own lives and their, maybe their finances with how Christmas coming, and there's a lot of pressure on that end. Um, that's actually some of the stuff that we want to focus on is relationships and finances, not just building a business or taking a passion and building it into something. But that's also another issue within here. I've been able to do a little bit of it, but I think I need to get better. I need to get better at, when talking with these guests, really being able to extrapolate, from the conversation, those key moments of success, or those key things that they found to help them out. That aha moment, or that point of, whoa, this is where it all clicked for me. Because a lot of times those type of instances are what inspires other people to do their other thing, or it helps someone through that exact same moment. We've all, if you go through and you evaluate and you talk with just about anybody out there, you might have fears to bring something up. Oh man, I'm really struggling here. 9 times out of 10, the other people around you have either are going through it, the same exact thing, or have been through it before. And by bringing that up, you open the floor either for a commonality between people, to where you both look at each other and you say, oh man, I'm dealing with the exact same thing right now myself. And you're growing a bond there for that, because now you have somebody else in your corner who understands. Or it's, man, I have been there before. Let me tell you what worked for me. And that's, don't be that guy that is like, oh, but you fell flat on your face. But I mean, tell them that if you did. Be humble enough to be like, hey, this is what I tried and it did not work out. So don't go down that path. I can at least tell you that adds something to someone's value proposition anyway, and will help someone out immeasurably in the future. But I hope that you guys have been able to listen through my little talk through on this one, and I hope you guys enjoy the podcast. I want to bring a lot more value, I guess. I know I keep saying that. I don't know whether it's just because it's a Gary V catchphrase, or just the fact of that's when you boil everything down with these long format type episodes, and this type of format of of knowledge, it's exactly what it's doing. It's bringing something else into your life. That was one of the things that, again, someone said in one of the podcasts, again, it might have been one of the Frizella ones, that the people you surround yourself with, you're the sum. That's a phrase that goes back. I know I've heard this multiple times. You're the sum of the 5 closest people you hang out with. Well, you can kind of skew that, because really, you're the sum of the information that you're taking in. So it doesn't, the people around you have a major influence, but either, you can stack the deck against those negative people or those negative instances if you fill those banks with a knowledge base, with that positivity, with, the drive. You really, you start to become the smartest person in the room, or you have knowledge, you have something to give, in there. You have something to add instead of just being someone who's always taking away from in a conversation. That's big. And I found that in my own life, that's something that listening to these subject matter experts through these podcasts, through this long format information, it's been a great thing. And it's been something that I thought has brought value to my own life and want to do for other people. And at the same time too, is it kind of helps me out in another project along the way that I have down the road that's going to be giving back even more into the veteran space and into the veteran community. So
Yep.
5 minutes after I was gearing towards signing off, I just want to say thank you for listening, and I appreciate hanging in
Yep.
there for yet another episode of Veteran Success Story. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. For more guests and knowledge found on Veteran Success Story, follow us at Veteran Success Story on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, while it still exists, and really pretty much all of the platforms across there. You can just look us up. There is a website coming soon down the road to where, I'll have the books and products of a lot of the guests that we have on, links to all that stuff, and a lot more that have been putting together and compiling in the background while we get ready for the launch on that end. Hopefully early 2025. But follow, subscribe. Again, I don't have a Patreon or anything like that. At least not yet. I don't have any of those subscriptions. This is going to be put out totally free. Regardless, because I think that this information is something valuable for other people to glean from, and anything that comes back out of it is just going to be because I end up doing such a good job in bringing this stuff forward. I'm not saying that's where I'm at now, but that's my goal, is to be able to get to the point to bring people to where they want to listen to it. They're like, man, I really get something out of that show. And if you did get something out of the show, make sure you subscribe, but also tell someone else. Tell someone else in your life, hey man, did you hear Veteran Success Story? Or did you know this podcast exists from another veteran out there that's putting these projects together, that's trying, to put information out that's valuable for us within the veteran community. Spread the word. And don't be afraid to contact me, Veteran Success Story at gmail.com. You can also find behind me here Damn the Valley, which is a book I wrote. So on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible, also on social media at Damn the Valley Book, damnthevalleybook.com will give you access to author signed copies along with everything else, and everything within that project is being built into giving back. It's not something that I'm holding for myself. Right now it hasn't made money up to yet, and it never really should, because it's going to be something where I'm investing it right back into the veteran community. Because really, that's what would I be if I was profiting off of that? I was part of the story there, but I was only one. And if this is something that can enable me to be able to give back into the community, that's what I'm going to do, because that's what I think that would be the most honorable for the other guys that were there and the guys that we lost over there. I think that that's something that they could hold to be honorable and something good that can be done through that. So without taking up any more of your time, I just wanted to say thank you for listening to yet again another Veteran Success Story.